Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Finance and Audit Committee, April 20th regular meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with Finance and Audit Committee members, city staff, and members of the public participating in the downtown conference room and participating remotely. First, I'd like to introduce staff and Finance and Audit Committee members present. Those include Michael DeMoss, Matt Normington, Carol Wong, and myself, Brian Westcott. Staff present includes Administrative Service Director Brittany Mello. The interim finance director will not be with us tonight. Senior accountant Ying Chang and management analyst Adrian Patino. Also, I'm sorry, interim finance and budget manager Rainey Sin. Staff liaison Adrian, would you please provide instructions to the Finance and Audit Committee and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Right. Thank you, Chair Westcott and the members of the Finance and Audit Committee. Welcome everyone to the April 20th regular meeting of the Finance and Audit Committee, and thank you for attending. Staff will engage in webcams and microphones to make presentations and respond to members of the Finance and Audit Committee. For the members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment on an item on tonight's agenda, after the chair calls for public comment on the item you wish to speak on, for virtual participants, please engage the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen. For those who are calling in from a landline or cell phone, please press *9. And for those in person, please complete a speaker card and return it to the clerk's desk. That concludes the instructions, and I will return the meeting to the chair.
Thank you. Under public comment, the public may address the Finance and Audit Committee on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the committee once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The committee cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the advisory body cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. Now, our first order of business is under the consent calendar. The Finance and Audit Committee may take action to approve routine business items in one motion, unless a Finance and Audit Committee member, city staff member, or a member of the public requests that an item be discussed or continued to a later date. Staff liaison Adrian, do we have any public comment on the consent calendar?
If you'd like to make a public comment on the consent calendar, for those in attendance, please complete a speaker card and return it to the clerk's desk. For those who are in attendance virtually, please engage the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen. And for those dialing in from a cell phone or a landline, please press *9 now. I'm seeing no request for public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. First order is to approve the March 6, 2023 Finance and Audit Committee special meeting minutes, which were attached to the package. I might add, this is not a California Environmental Quality Act project. Staff liaison, Adrian, please state the motion.
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Do we have anyone?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Carol Wong is passes. Do we have a second?
Sure, I'll second.
Matt, thank you. So the let's all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have consensus on approving the special meeting minutes. All right, regular business. So now under regular business, the Finance and Audit Committee considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require Finance and Audit Committee approval. The first regular business item is to review the June 30th, 2022 single audit and recommend receipt by city council. I'd like to introduce management analyst Adrian Patino to introduce the item.
All right, thank you, Chair Westcott. So our first regular business item is the single audit for the year ended June 30th, 2022. And the single audit is a requirement for any non-federal agency that spends in excess of $750,000 in federal funds during the fiscal year. During the last fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022, the city of Menlo Park expended approximately $1.37 million in federal awarded funds. So the single audit is testing the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, which is attached in attachment A of this staff report. And it is intended to ensure that a city or agency is using those federal funds correctly in compliance with standards set by the Office of Budget Management. So the city's auditor, which is Lance Soul and Lungard, who also assist the city with the annual comprehensive financial report, which we presented in our last meeting, rendered their independent auditor's opinion. And they gave the city an unmodified, clean opinion, which indicates that the city complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements that could have a direct and material effect on each of its major federal programs. So with that, in the attachments, we have the independent accountant's report, which will look very familiar since is also included in the act for which we presented last time. And then we also have the actual CFA schedule, where we have the $1.37 million in federal funds that the city expended in the prior fiscal year, listed out in this format to show what the funding sources are and the expenditure amounts. So with that, I open it up to the committee for any clarifying questions.
Okay, any questions from the committee? So it looks like in the audit, everything's in a good state. All right, so the committee has no questions at this point. Staff liaison, do we have any public comment?
For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment on the single audit report for the year ended June 30th, 2022. For those virtual participants, please engage the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen. For those dialing in from a landline or a cell phone, please press *9. And for those in person, please present a completed speaker card to the clerk's desk. I'm seeing no request for public comment at this time.
Okay, very good. Well then, staff liaison, please state the motion.
Motion to recommend receipt of the June 30th, 2022 single audit report by City Council.
Okay, do we have a motion to pass?
I'll motion to pass.
Any second?
I'll second that one.
Thank you. All right. We can take a roll call on the motion. Vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimously passed. Thank you. All right, moving on. The second regular business item is review the March 31st, 2023 investment report and recommend receipt by City Council. This is also not a CEQA project. I'd like to introduce our analyst Adrian to introduce this item and make your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the review of the investment portfolio for the period ended March 31st, 2023. Staff is acting the Finance and Audit Committee to review the city's investment portfolio and to recommend receipt of this report by City Council. So brief overview of the investment report. The city's investment portfolio is at about 188 million in fair value versus an amortized cost of 191.9 million, which comes out to an unrealized loss of approximately 3.8 million. This is a function of the current interest rate environment, since the city's portfolio is primarily comprised of bonds, and bonds have an inverse relationship with interest rates. So as interest rates continue to rise, market value of fixed income securities falls. This does not present a risk to the city, as we are a buy and hold investor. So we hold all of these securities to maturity, and we work very closely with our investment advisors to ensure that the city's cash flow remains in a good place, and that these securities will roll off at regular intervals to help aid in the city's liquidity. Additionally, the city has $10 million in LAIF, which is the Local Agency Investment Fund. The LAIF is managed by the California Treasurer's Office and is currently yielding about 2.83%. Over the years, LAIF is it's considered a safe investment, and its returns have kind of fluctuated in the past few years, really low in the early stages of the pandemic, and then as interest rates have risen, the yields from LAIF have also risen to kind of keep pace. Another thing to call out in this quarter's investment report is the movement within the ESG ratings for the city's securities portfolio. In this prior quarter, the average ESG rating was about 2.69. And we, at the end of this quarter, are up to about 3.0 for the city's average ESG rating. And as a reminder, the ESG scale goes from 1 to 5, with 3 being an average rating. So the city's portfolio is in line with average. The city's investment policy states that the city's portfolio performance is benchmarked against treasury notes. So the city's portfolio is yielding 2.55% weighted average, with a weighted average maturity of about 2.06 years. The average 2-year note is yielding about 2.15%. So the city's portfolio is outperforming the benchmark by about 0.4%. So with that, I return the meeting to the chair and open for any questions.
Thank you. So I'd like to open up any clarifying questions from our committee. Yes.
I noticed we got 1.2 million in church. Do you think that we should spread that out over a number of banks based on the Silicon Valley Bank problem?
That's probably a question that we would need to loop in our interim finance director, Marvin Davis, who was unable to attend. And I could also send that to our investment advisor.
Yeah, it's just that I'd like to know if anyone in authorities thinks that's a good idea.
Certainly do that.
Then the loss of the 3.8 million, and that have anything to do with things other than bonds and interest? For example, did we have money at Silicon Bank
No,
That question.
the city had no,
or stock in it?
yeah, the city had no direct exposure to.
So it's
Silicon
just
Valley
based on
Bank.
interest rate.
Yes, this is totally movement.
Okay, the other
within
thing-
interest rates.
One last thing that came to my mind was, we had talked about ESG.
Right.
is the ESG rating that we've got coincidental, or are we actually trying to get a low ESG or a high ESG, whatever it means?
So there's nothing in the investment policy which specifically guides the city make investments tied to any sort of specific ESG rating. So the main motivations of all of the city's investments and its investment strategy is in security, liquidity, and yield. So it is a factor that we do look at, but it is not a driver of how the city approaches investments with its advisor.
Okay,
So if all other things were
Right,
being equal, you
Yeah.
take the E ESG.
those are my questions.
right. It's my understanding, there's no minimum, as you said, or requirement on ESG, but it's something where they're just adding to the
Sure.
analysis in a way, getting used to it.
Mhm.
Okay. And the 3.8 million is really not a loss, it's a book,
Change.
Yeah.
yeah, because
Yeah.
you're holding the bonds to maturity and that will be full value, so.
Yeah. It would only become a loss if we had to liquidate everything the city's holding right now, which is not something that we plan on. doing.
Yeah, okay, good, it's good to know we're not planning on liquidating. We're selling the city to somebody else. All right, so, do we have any public comment on the report?
For members who are of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide a public comment on the March 31st, 2023 investment report. Please, if you are a virtual participant, engage the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen. If you are dialing in from a landline or a cell phone, please press *9 now. And if you are in person, please complete a speaker card and return it to the clerk's desk. I'm seeing no request for public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. Then we should proceed. Do I have a motion to,
I did have.
okay,
Two
excuse me.
quick questions. So I know the cash is not an SVB. Do we know where it is?
Yeah, so this, the cash listed here is in our securities portfolio, so it's with, it's. Since all these reports are kind of like a moment in time, when these reports were pulled, we had a number of securities mature and return the cash to us, so it is cash that's available for us to reinvest, to move into LAIF or to move into Union Bank, whatever the city chooses to do at this point in time.
Gotcha.
So
So.
it's in a
so
brokerage
with-
account?
And then our bank account is Union Bank. That's the quote. Gotcha.
Which
Which
is
is switching over.
Switching over to
going
the
to be US Bank,
Yeah.
but both quality institutions, so.
My second question is just, this is a snapshot for March 31st. Do we have sort of a quarter by quarter trend?
Yeah, so we have, if you look at attachment B, this should give you the quarterly summary for. Yes, the quarterly consolidated portfolio report, which is attachment B of the staff report.
I'll have a look at that. That's just my question. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? All right. All right, well, with that, we'd like to take action and recommend, so do we have a motion to recommend a receipt by city council of the investment report? We have a,
Sure, I will motion
all
that.
right, thank you, Matt, and second.
I'll second.
You'll second, take roll call vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, unanimous consent. Thank you. So let's see, the final item is to review, our Finance and Audit Committee work plan. And, like to introduce Adrian again. Could you present that plan that we worked on?
Certainly. So,
Let's see.
so at our last meeting, the committee expressed a desire to take a look at the approved work plan. I think the last time we reviewed this was at our December meeting,
Mhm.
if I remember correctly, and a number of changes to the parking lot items were made in that meeting. So the work plan that we're showing you today incorporates those changes to the parking lot items. The top box of the approved city council projects have remained unchanged. And the reference documents have been updated to reflect the city's .org to .gov transition, as well as the release of the new ACFR.
Okay, what I might suggest, since this is a transition period, we're gonna add new members, some of us are rolling off, but I would think we might want a lead person on some of these work items to get them moving ahead. Because one of the problems is it's been, a period of COVID and things were somewhat stagnant, but I think now we have some members that are actively engaged, so. Definitely the approved projects. Are there any staff committee members that are interested in maybe leading those efforts, one of those efforts? So we have, the investment policy review. We have the independent auditors report review. And we have the Open Gov transparency improvement. So, I'll open that up to the committee, but are there any suggestions or people that would want to maybe sign up for one of those?
Can we talk about what each of those mean? Maybe like
Okay.
What the, maybe
Yes,
we could
and we might need
definition around it.
some help, but the investment policy is, there is a stated investment policy by City of Menlo Park, and we talked about, for instance, ESG is not embedded in that policy, but there might in the future that would be a thing to review, is how much or how little should ESG be involved or influence. But it's basically the policy for Menlo Park.
Okay.
And somebody, periodically, things like what we just mentioned, how much risk are we exposed to banks? Because, I don't think up until this year that has really been considered as an issue. That shocked a lot of people. But those would be the types of things. I would imagine, 90% of it would be approved, but it should be looked at and modernized, and so.
Well, if I wanted to serve on that first one, which I'm kind of interested, do I meet with someone or?
Yeah, what you would do is you would head up the initiative, and then maybe at the next meeting, there might be another person, somebody new. And you would first get a copy of the policy and review it, and probably meet with the Menlo Park staff members and
Okay.
get your questions answered, and then come back, and I would say, in a couple meetings, present back to the committee and say, this is what we found, these are areas we'd like to discuss, and then discuss it with the bigger committee.
If no one else is interested, I'd be interested, but it doesn't matter to me.
I'm interested in all three, so. I'm not gonna take on anyone.
Now you can participate, but I was really thinking if somebody needs to, take steps, like say, okay, set the calendar, say. First step is let's get a copy of the policy, review it. Maybe have a subcommittee meeting and go through any issues, concerns, or things that, are not, that make total sense.
Okay, who do I get the policy from?
Adrian could probably, or someone can
Yeah, absolutely. So if I may,
Yes,
so
please.
if the committee decides to form a subcommittee to look at these topics, it can be 1 to 2 of you, given the current makeup, if it is reduced, just to avoid that quorum and a violation of the Brown Act. So if it was 1 or 2 of you forming this review committee, you'd work with staff, so we'd have separate meetings outside of this set schedule to delve in. So we would likely for the first one, we'd be inviting our investment advisory firm to participate in that. A note on the timing for this, we are underway doing a request for proposals with our investment advisor. We are completing interviews, and so we might be having a new advisor, or the incumbent
Right.
might be successful. Depending on those results, I presume that advisor is going to want to take a look at the investment policy as well. And so it might be a good timing to
Right.
review it together.
I agree.
So is this linked to the parking lot item, use of multiple investment advisors, or is that something different?
The RFP. So periodically, as a matter of best practice, the city engages in requests for proposals to keep it a competitive process for taxpayer dollars, essentially.
But we only select one.
We would only be
Okay.
selecting one.
Okay. So, but maybe we should start with the approved projects, the 3. Is there anyone, as we could have up to 2
Yes.
people? Now, you might want to fill those spots in, as I said, because there'll be 7 people on this committee, am I correct, or 4, 5?
We will find that out on April 25th. So the application period went through April 7th. Depending on how many folks apply to express interest in serving on this committee, the council will make a determination if we are keeping it 7 members or reducing it to 5.
Okay. And of the members here today, how many, I know this is my last meeting, but the other 3 are probably going to continue, right?
I reapplied because my term is also up and I don't know the results
Okay.
of the selection.
Yeah, same
until
here.
that
Yeah.
day.
Okay. And you're
No,
new. Okay.
30th.
So that's my take on all 3.
Okay, and Susanna, is she,
Her term ends April 30th, 2024.
okay, well, maybe tonight we can at least start with, would you like to head up the subcommittee on the first item, the annual investment policy?
I'll do that.
Okay, very good. And so, Michael DeMoss will head up that. I don't think we have to vote or anything. That's just a vote.
No, you don't.
Yeah. And we'll keep it open for if there's a second person. Now, can we take other people with the caveat that, for tonight, their committee or subcommittee chair, and assuming they get reassigned, or do we wait?
So I would propose that this could be an expressing interest discussion. And when you have the new members to formally form the subcommittees and then to take a formal vote of those roles,
Right.
which according to the Brown Act, we would need at that time.
But we can do it at least for the first.
If you're looking to form the subcommittee with the
Mike,
1 member
yeah.
now, then I would ask for a vote.
Yes, okay. So the proposal is to have Michael Gamas lead the subcommittee on the annual investment review policy. And we'll take, anybody would like to extend a motion?
I'll extend the motion for Mike to take on the review of the investment policy.
Okay, do we have a second?
Yes, I will.
We're running out of people. Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous, yes,
If I may, I might be wrong on the procedures in the Brown Act regarding this. It's possible that forming a subcommittee must be agendized, since what is agendized on this evening is reviewing the work plan. So I am going to just run this by our city attorney's
No, that's
office,
fine.
make sure I'm not running afoul of the Brown Act.
And the reason I'm doing this, to be honest, not honest, but is, this committee only meets like 4 times a year. That was another thing we were gonna look into, but I feel to get momentum, we have to start doing some of this, because if we wait to the next meeting, you won't get the committee and going until maybe October. So, I think it's important to set some precedent here and at least we'll try for now and see if we're in violation of any of the Brown Act or any of the other things. So with that, let's take a vote. All in favor? Aye, okay, so for now, that's the proposal, or the subcommittee is formed until further notice. Now, boy, it's tough. Any interest in the other ones, at least to propose that there might be a, approach, because there's so many moving variables here where people might not be here back on the committee. But are there any burning, interests in the other two, the annual auditors report review and the open gov?
No, I kind of feel like we talked
Yeah, we
about.
did some of this,
Yeah,
right?
we
Number
did some
3,
of this
right?
work, yeah,
Yeah, you and I did some stuff on OpenGov.
yeah.
So, but I'd have to go, have to go back and see whatever, became
I
that.
think we typed something up.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we should do this. So from a preliminary standpoint, you're willing to, maybe at the next meeting, propose to become a subcommittee to review OpenGov.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and I don't think we have to, but if we put that in the agenda under the work plan, so Carol and Matt would continue their work in OpenGov, and you can potentially formally form a subcommittee at the next meeting, once we understand the procedure and you have a new group. All right, well, that's positive too.
Yeah, and what do we think number 2, what sort of review on the auditor's report are we thinking about? Is this like the auditor's report is
Currently
pretty
all review
standard,
it,
yeah.
right?
Right, yeah, that's probably, it is the Finance and Audit Committee, so maybe we should leave that at the committee level,
Oh, okay.
right?
Okay,
'Cause
I see.
I
Okay,
think,
now I understand, okay, yeah.
yeah, I think that is kind of our major duty,
Mhm.
so. Now on any of on the parking items, in a way, I think some of the discussion of the ESG ratings could be folded into the subcommittee, if that makes sense. So that's one area that maybe you can add to the subcommittee if that subcommittee does exist. Okay, any other ideas on the parking items? For today?
Maybe a little more detail on what we're trying to do for each of them. There's quite a few.
Why don't we do this? Maybe the suggestion should be at the next meeting. That's an agenda item. Can we do that? Where with the new group, you review each of the parking items and define them.
Mhm.
And at that point, you'll know how to form subcommittees. And I think you can engage the members in getting them assigned to a few or at least one of these items to make some progress. Outside, the general meetings that we have every 3 months.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can add that as an agenda item where clarification, definition, and potentially deciding if they warrant a subcommittee and who would be on the subcommittee. Okay? All right. So, well, I appreciate that because I do think, you know, I do think people want to get engaged. Obviously, people volunteer here and this is the best way to do it. And I know when I first started pre-COVID, there was, you know, that's basically how the committee or the committee operated. So I think it's a great step to move back in that direction. All right. So we did preliminarily pass one item, is to form a subcommittee. Are there any other comments from the committee on any of this at this time? Yes.
It is an awful subject but I don't see anything about pensions and I just wondered, are we involved in overseeing pensions and how that's managed?
Well, you can at least audit. That actually was done. There was a pension review committee, I remember, a few years ago.
Hmm.
So there was a letter and everything, but so would you like to add that to the potential? Maybe we should add that to the,
Well, what I'm wondering is it anywhere in these?
yeah, the whole pension policy is available.
Well, I mean, on the screen here.
Well, I don't
When you
think it's,
send that out, do we get any information on pension status? Whether it's funded properly, et cetera. There's so much information here that
yeah.
I get a little hazed over.
Well, you can ask, maybe what you'd like is staff members to present the pension, the approach and the state, you know, the
Okay.
conditions, that maybe that's another item. Because I know it's a big issue with everyone in government right now is how much liability and how much coverage. And so with that, would you like
Well,
that to be added to the next agenda is a report on the pension?
why not?
Sure. No, that's been done before, I know. And then from there, you can decide if there needs to be a more review and possibly a subcommittee.
Okay.
All right, so that's a good idea. Any other clarifying points? Yes. Okay.
You know, I got to thinking from the last meeting about, you know, what am I doing here? And I served on an audit committee years ago at a bank. And it was a small bank. But nevertheless, the internal audit committee, which I was the chairman of, decided that we should look at each check that goes in and out of the bank. You know, are we expected to look at
No,
the check register?
no. No, I mean, we have staff and that's the city. I don't think you'd want to spend all that.
No, I think it would be a massive task.
Well, and we do have an audit. We have an outside audit that does that.
Auditor.
Yeah,
Okay,
firm.
well,
so,
here's my point. At the bank, we found out that there was some private expenditures that were not authorized. Okay, I don't expect that to be here, but if those happen here at Menlo Park, I don't want someone to come and say, you're on the Finance and Audit Committee, why didn't you audit that? That's my point.
no, but that's the role of the public accounting firm. They would be liable. They're supposed to be.
I know what they cannot determine whether or not someone is paying for their private golf course too.
Okay, we can agree to
That's the-
disagree.
I've been a lawyer for almost 50 years.
Yeah.
And this stuff comes across our desk all the time.
Well, like I say, I mean, I know. I've been in business for 50 years and that's the role of a accounting firm.
Okay. As long as I'm.
You're not on the hook.
That's my point.
Right. Okay, but as part of the audit review of the audit, you can make sure that's being done.
Sure.
I mean, that's the kind of thing I think is just if there's policy or that you can add.
Well, that would probably be the job of whoever takes number 2.
Right. And so, okay, so just to summarize, we formed a subcommittee to review the investment policy, at least a preliminary subcommittee subject to review. We've added the agenda item for the next meeting to clarify the all the items that we're classifying under parking. And with the potential to actively try to select the ones that need a subcommittee and hopefully to assign members of the new Finance and Audit Committee to that. So the committee does get at least a fast start, let's say. And I think there was a third item.
Adding pensions to the.
Oh, right, so the agenda item is at some point, we'd like staff to at least update us on pension policy and coverage.
Yes, so to clarify, I believe I heard the direction was to add a pension review staff report to the next agenda
If,
versus add it to the parking lot item.
right,
So
correct,
just point of clarification. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Very good. Okay. So any other comments from the committee at this point? Okay, thank you. Any public comments?
For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment on the review of the Finance and Audit Committee work plan. If you are logged in virtually, please engage the raised hand feature at the bottom of your screen. If you are calling from a landline or a cell phone, please press *9 now. And if you are in person, please present a completed speaker card to the clerk's desk. I'm seeing no request for public comment at this time.
Okay,
Chair, if I may
Yes.
make a final comment before you adjourn, I just wanted to give a little shout out to our senior accountant, Ying Chen, who's on the Zoom with us today. We had our employee awards handed out this afternoon, and Ying was nominated by her peers to receive the Special Accomplishments Award for her work on the ACBR and the single audit. So just wanted to show our appreciation for all of the great work Ying is doing. Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you all for your support.
And do the accountants review the checks? That's a question.
You mean,
Invoices, yeah.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
yeah, we review the checks and the auditors does pull the selection based on our checks list, pull a sample test to test if everything looks okay. Also check with the online banking.
Very good, thank you. All right,
Third question.
yes,
Do you also check the credit cards? Does the city have credit cards?
Yes.
Yes. Those will be entered as the journal entry in the journal ledger, and the auditor will pull the sample journal entry based on the manual journal entry list that we provided, and they will test them.
Okay,
Yeah, based on selection.
all right,
Credit cards are pretty much very restricted on where they can be used and for how much for each staff.
okay.
thank you.
So regarding the work plan, is there any further actions we need to take at this time?
No.
Okay. Are there any other open comments? Concerns? All right. I think with that, pardon me?
Next.
Oh, yes, next meeting is that scheduled as the
Yeah,
regular
the next regular meeting is
Thursday?
for the third Thursday of each quarter, so that the next one will be July 20th.
Right.
Thursday, July 20th.
Okay, and in the meantime, the city will notify the people on the committee as well as other new ones on their assignments, correct?
Yes, on April 25th, that is an item before the city council.
Okay, So you should be hearing about that. Boy, July sounds like a long time away. I'm glad we did this though tonight. Yes, so. Well, with that, I thank everyone for working. I've enjoyed my time on the committee and I look forward to good things in the future. And with that, I think we can adjourn the meeting.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
service, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
I feel good. We got some of those.